What's up, and welcome to the Practical Data Community Lunch and Learns. Today, we have a special guest, Sami Hero. We'll be talking about full stack data modeling, so I'll let you take it from here, Sami.
Thanks, Joe. Happy to be here. And it's I'm sitting in the office in Helsinki, and it's pitch dark outside. So fun times this time of the year. So I don't know if anybody knows anything about Ellie. So what I did was I put a few slides together just to walk through a little bit about what we do in terms of data modeling. And we started talking about the full stack in a way of like everything is full stack always, but particularly because we cover the conceptual and logical and physical modeling, but we also approach it also from kind of a reverse engineering where we go bottom up and then top down. So we don't just do forward engineering, but we also do the reverse. And there's a lot of interesting stuff happening around the AI as well. And just happy to share it, and feel free to jump in and ask questions, because I think it's always the most interesting way of doing it. And if you want to see something live, I can also just jump into the product live, and we can look at things if that is more interesting. All right, so let me just share real quick. And by way of introduction, so I'm relatively, let's say, new to Ellie. So I joined Ellie in November last year as the CEO, but I've been doing databases and data-related things since 80s, and I was in one of the ETL startups in '98 that then got sold to Canadians. That's how I moved from Paris to Toronto, and then later to New York, and run several enterprise data platforms in major corporations, and then kind of came back to the roots, so to speak, last year, and it's been great time since, because I'm dating myself a little bit, but I love working with especially with the current generation of data people. But yeah, so Ellie has been around since several years. And if you didn't know that, the product is actually a spin-off from a training company, which I think, Joe, you've met Ari Hovi and those guys maybe at some point. And Hannu Järvi, who's our co-founder, he's probably trained or somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people on conceptual data modeling and data vault modeling and other related things. And he's our resident professor, essentially. Whenever we have some weird ideas, we usually
Wasn't Ari like one of the like OG original data modelers from back in the day? Yeah.
Yep. And he just actually wrote a book around SQL that was published just recently.
Yeah.
It's and it's like every time we think SQL is dead, and my daughter just did masters in Paris, and last Christmas break we spent time talking about left joins and outer joins and the complexities and things like that. So everybody's still learning it. It's kind of fantastic how long it's stayed, and it's still staying, right? But yeah, Ari is the OG. So he's a few years older than I am, but we still have some war stories from the early days, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so let's see if I can get there. So I borrowed a couple of slides from my Big Data London presentation, but obviously the thing that we're trying to address is particularly the lack of collaboration. A lot of the data product related projects, I think Gartner says they fail, but I would like to say that they fail to meet expectations, because the projects don't exactly fail. We just didn't understand each other between the IT and business teams, and like I ran into this several times in the US when I was running a huge enterprise data platform for a healthcare related business. I would tell my dev team to do something, and then they would go do something, and then I would go behind their back to check what they did, and we ended up having some interesting conversations because I clearly didn't explain it right, and we didn't do the modeling right. So we ended up having a bunch of rework. But other than that, it's obviously having clarity on the objectives, and then of course the data quality and access is always a good topic to talk about. And we've solved that with our partner CData for most part. But yeah, so what we are really set to do, and you'll start seeing it in a second why this kind of makes sense, is that we're trying to sit essentially in between kind of the technical view and then the top-down business view of things. And from purely from a technical perspective, like nobody ever starts a project from scratch anymore. So you always start with some sort of existing, whether it's legacy or it's fairly modern, but it starts to feel like legacy. And then you start figuring out is like, how do I leverage these data assets? How do I build something new and better that supports the business as it stands today? And on the other hand, you need to have a very clear understanding of the business and what you're set to build and why are you building it in the first place. I've got some really interesting stories from insurance, so if we'll have time, we can talk about those a little bit. How every insurance company thinks they're different, but they are more same than different, and how you can quickly go in the terrible places or in the great places if you take that approach. And what we like to say at Ellie is that we want to work really, really hard and enable the business and IT teams to create this common understanding of what they're set to do. Spending time on making sure that we understand what a customer is or what a product is, and then working also on the metrics. Is that what is a return on marketing promotion, for instance, or something else, and making sure that we're crystal clear on the why and the what before we go and start building with the how on the solution. And then underlying it is we talk a lot about the AI and how it helps. Me personally, I love AI, but I also realized that I need to supervise AI quite a bit. So a little while ago, I was using our AI to create a quick conceptual model around a Hollywood blockbuster movie, and I proposed one of the relationships kind of the wrong way. For some reason, our AI thought that it would make sense to have multiple movies for a single trailer. So obviously, it takes 2 seconds to swap the direction and switch it. But AI still does sometimes some fun things. So it's always, I like to think of it as human supervised and AI assisted. Then when we think about modeling, you can guess that I'm a huge fan of Isaac Asimov and the 3 laws of anything. So when I joined, we started with Hannu. We started thinking about okay, so what makes a good model? I think there are a lot of schools of thoughts, and the modeling's been around forever. But we wanted to distill it into a couple of very simple statements, and we came up with these 3 because 3 is a good number. And I think the first one is probably the most important, which is that the models must reflect reality. So essentially, when we start building something and we start thinking about it, if it's not reflecting the business reality or the organization's reality today, I shouldn't talk about business because some of our customers are NGOs and nonprofits and things like that. So there are more organizations, but they have data issues as well. And the second part, which is super important for this common understanding, is that the models must be easy to understand. And this is also where AI can be tremendously helpful for us. Is that if there's somebody who doesn't really understand modeling, even though it's pretty straightforward when they look at especially conceptual models, they can always use the AI to ask questions like, explain me this, or explain what happens between these 2 entities, for instance. And luckily, in those cases, the AI can explain it in English or French or Finnish, or LLMs are great in translating the languages. So it helps those people who are using the models as reference for their work to make sure that they really get what's going on. And then the last part is that models must scale with the business. So this is also something that when we build these new data products, we've seen situations where the dashboards and other things are being built, purpose-built, always for a singular need for a report or a dashboard. And if you don't think about the kind of the potential future expansion need, you'll just end up often creating like, OBT, one big table, a very wide table. It responds very well into the ticket from finance. It answers the question, but then, a little bit later, something shifts a little bit in the data set, and now suddenly the report is no longer reflecting the what's going on in the business, or it just becomes super slow. I had some daily runs in when I was still in New York, which were supposed to run every day, but at one point they were taking 36 hours to run. So obviously, completely crazy. So those things didn't scale with our business. So we needed to re-engineer a lot. But those are kind of the three things that we're super focused on. And when we talk to our customers, who oftentimes they come to us and they ask like, what does the best practice look like, and what should we think about? So we start often with the very, very basics, which might sound surprising, but it's better that we do it well. It's a little bit like golf, if you get the basics right, you'll be much happier later. And then from a full stack perspective, so our thinking is that we have to have a solid functionality for all three of these layers. So Ellie started at the top. So we started with the conceptual, semantic and conceptual modeling. So that was the kind of the reason, raison d'être in the beginning for the tool. It came from to support the consulting business and the training business, and then from there we essentially started building the capabilities of converting those conceptual models into logical models, starting to put the attributes in and starting to enrich them and make them better. And then, of course, until you push them into a physical layer and create proper ERDs, they're not, terribly useful for data science, or they would have to go through some other tools. And we are, I would say, we're super good at the conceptual and quite good with the logical model, and then we have some work that's still happening with in the physical modeling side of things. So we're good at it, but there are some kind of UX elements that I'd like to get things happening better. Like drag and drop to create relationships between attributes and little things like that. But we're getting there, and if we can still generate all the DDLs and push them into the orchestration if we need. So this kind of way of thinking is that you need to be able to move back and forth. So that's the other thing that we're working on, is that we have created a lot of reusable entities, reusable relationships. Just essentially everything is reusable, and we're also making them move between the layers, so you can kind of navigate up and down very easily. And in the future, it'll be like crazy simple. So it's nice if you kind of need to shift back and forth. Now, if we think about, and this is probably, tell me, this might be just like motherhood and apple pie type of thing. So, raise hand, stop me if that sounds kind of silly. But when we talk about this, especially with a bigger company, so we tend to deal a lot with financial services, manufacturing, telcos, kind of a large complex businesses. And when we start about this whole modeling journey, so the one thing that we keep on always harping about is that make sure that you are very clear on the business value for the data product you're starting to build. Start with that, and then after that, let's start figuring out how do we break often the very big complex problems into smaller components. It's we talk a lot about the federated approach or the domain-based modeling approach, where we take that huge problem and we start chunking it down. Like we have one huge global manufacturing company. We could call it manufacturing electronics. They do a whole tons of different things. They have 18 specific domains, and then each of those domains have subdomains, and we help them think it through and build those models. And the beauty of this is that there is always some level of overlap. So, we talk about the customer, we talk about the product, or we talk about some manufacturing supply chain type of thing. Every time the entities somehow overlap, we start generating that big model through those smaller components. So we're essentially, it's like the old saying, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? I guess it's like one bit at a time, right? This is very much the approach that we promote to our customers and our consulting partners and so forth. And the other thing is that there's also this heavy engagement with the business stakeholders and business users, and this is also quite useful that we have different kinds of user levels as well for the product. So we have the typical modelers, but then we have contributors, and then we also have read-only people. So one of our major telco customers, they have 20 hardcore modelers, and then they have a large number of contributors, and then they have about 30,000 read users. So the people who are consuming dashboards and things like that, they want to be able to come back to the model and use it as a reference and figure out what's going on there. So it's essentially giving a very easy access to all of this information. So it's not like in some organizations, you ask, like, do you have a data architecture or something like that? They are like, yeah, it's somewhere. It's a corporate thing. It's hidden somewhere. We don't have access. We don't know what's going on where it is. And then also the just making sure that as we're doing all of this effort is that we're generating a business glossary. We're very clear on what terms we're using, how they relate to each other, and as we are building the conceptual model, and then we're moving into the logical and physical, the glossary obviously gets more detailed, and as we start kind of sometimes normalizing the tables along the way, and kind of creating a more complete view of what we're building. And here you can see a little bit about the kind of the simplicity of. We try to make this like super kind of a mirror-like from a usability perspective, that it's super easy to use, but at the same time it's very powerful, and it's more than just a pretty picture, so to speak. But this is kind of the way oftentimes what happens when we start the modeling. So oftentimes we start with connecting to an existing system, and we bring in the physical data model that is there. So sometimes it's an old Teradata system, sometimes not so old system, but we bring it in. Then what we do is that we consume the metadata. So we can throw in the physical tables on the canvas. We show the relationships and so forth there. But if it's too big of a model, because sometimes we're dealing with thousands of tables, we can also pull it into what we call a source navigator, which is essentially a way of managing the metadata in more of a list format, or it's a kind of a hierarchical table format as well. And as we do that, we enrich the metadata with AI. So we have two ways of doing it. One is that we take a peek of the data that's in the tables, so that we can, like in SAP case, you need to understand that there are tables called DD02 or KPN68, and then we convert them to say, okay, this is a customer master, and the attributes are the following. I'll show it in a second. So that's and then we can use our bot to help identify the assets that we want. Essentially, we chat with things like, I need to build a dashboard on marketing profitability. So what assets do I need? And then our AI will essentially propose assets, which we can then throw into the canvas and start modeling from there. So there's a number of different ways of using it. And then, how we use the AI is that as we create this synthetic metadata, obviously it's not perfect. It's hard to make it super perfect. So what we do is that we tag everything that is AI generated with a little blue icon. And then the idea is that when a human or the user goes there and does some edits, so oftentimes it's just to clarify something or change something small if we know absolutely what's going on there. It's very easy to validate it. And then that little toggle goes off, and we know that it's actually validated now, and it's good content. So in the first one, you can see it's way too small, but you know, I can if you want to play with it, I can hook you up with a trial. And of course, if you want to buy it, you know, you know who to call. But essentially, here we have a list of tables. We have the real physical name, and then we have the synthetic name. Then we have some explanations and some additional metadata. If we can't take a look into the data itself, we can also create synthetic metadata just looking at the table names and columns, kind of the headers. But it depends on you know, let's say results will vary depending on the quality of the metadata as it is. Worst case, obviously, is that you have some transaction table which just has a couple of foreign primary key, a couple of foreign keys, and then it has bunch of timestamps and some values, and then you're trying to figure out, and then completely cryptical names. So it's nearly impossible to figure out what that is. But then when we have a table, you know, we'll have some descriptions, and then we usually have some tags. We also work to cluster the attributes so that if we have like geographical data, address data or something like that, it's super easy to know what it is. So when we're doing the modeling, we can bring in the relevant things. And then finally, we have a bot that you can have a conversation that will help you find the relevant assets. We named we're struggling a little bit finding a good name for the bot, and first we thought of calling it Ellie, because you know the product is called Ellie and so forth in the company. Okay, so let's stop there. Ville is asking, have you tested how well this works in systems? Okay, so yes, we have. So we've used it with we definitely have used it with Oracle ERP with good success. SAP is a little hit or miss. Depends on the module with SAP and which version of SAP you are. If you are still on R3, it's a little bit of a struggle. So the more modern SAP integration you have, the better off you are. So if you're integrated with NetWeaver or some of those middleware things, it works better. I used to work for SAP for a number of years, and in my ETL days, we actually did this metadata navigator product for SAP. So I know it can be painful. I think they have for their customer master, I think you have 34 tables or something like that just to describe the customer. So it is a little struggle. And I think 340,000 tables or so, depending on the module. But yeah, it does work. And then the other AI thing is that you can obviously so you can build models from scratch, and if you want to have fun, you know, listening to me stumble around this Hollywood movie model, yeah, it's on YouTube. And oh yeah, so Jenna, any integration with DBT? Yep, we do. We do import and export DBT YAML files, and we're working a lot right now. We actually did a lot of work last year on DBT integration with the analytics engineering workflow, but we pivoted a little bit away from it and stuck to the core modeling and then pushing the YAML files back and forth. Yeah, so this is kind of just a sample here. Is that what I was fooling around with this simple model, and this was a physical model, and I asked the AI to suggest some improvements, and it was essentially, it proposed some missing relationships there, and this part of our AI was not supposed to work with the physical models. It was really meant for conceptual models, but it does work here too. So what it did was that it gave me these red lines on relationships because it's missing the foreign key, primary key relationships on the fields. So essentially now, if you do this today, so this was some weeks back, if you today you do this, it will actually pop up the relationship definitions. So it will put the relationship on the canvas, but then it will ask you to define. It's like which field to which field the relationship goes. And here is the thing that I've been asking my dev team to do is that you see the relationships are just going between entities, and you essentially have to hover over it to see from which field to which field it goes, or you can click it open. I'd love it to go like exactly where the field is, but you know, little things. We can always improve, right? So you can do this kind of stuff, and then the thing which is really cool, we have the collaboration capability, so people can leave, particularly the contributors, if they are not doing actual edits, we can leave a little little questions. We can do comments onto the models, and then we ping the people who need to answer directly, and today we have rudimentary approval flows as well on kind of how do we promote things into production if we work on them ourselves. But right now we're working with a couple of our largest customers on a full-blown kind of Git-like pull request-driven approval system, which is going to be like industrial strength. Probably will be out in January or something like that. But if you're curious, I'd also be curious to talking to any of you or some of you or all of you about what you'd like to see in a full-blown approval approach when it comes to modeling, because it's something that a lot of large corporations find very valuable. But it's also super tricky because while these big corporations say that they need it to be fully functional approval at every level of changes. Kind of, you have your own branch, and then you make changes, and how you merge it back into the core with the approvals. They also want it to be super simple. So it's in a good kind of Goldilocks way, is that it needs to be fully capable, but it needs to be just perfect in terms of usability as well, so that business users can use it as well. It doesn't have to be data modeler doing all the approvals. And once as you are doing all this, so we create the business glossary. So here's just a couple of simple things. This actually, the last, which shows the relationship between entities, is in this case is pretty neat, because once this is not a super simple model, obviously, but once you start having a bigger model, this relationship within the glossary view shows you the full relationship set across all the models. So if your purchase order appears in a bunch of different models, it will show all the potential relationships that it will have across all the models and canvases existing on Ellie. So that's how you start getting into those overlaps, and you can start identifying entities that you might want to make reusable, and then there might be some also relationships between entities that you want to make reusable as glossary items as well, and you can promote them super easily. And the nice thing with this kind of let's call them whatever super glossary items is that if you use then those reusable entities elsewhere, once you make a change in the master, so to speak, all the changes are reflected across all the models that are using that particular native ones. If you copy them, then it's a different story. And we have a lot of inheritance between the structures and the folders and things like that as well, which and then a lot of security between them. So it's kind of a full-blown thing, and of course it integrates with Collibra and Purview. No Elation yet, but those two are bidirectionally integrated as well. So if you have a data governance system in place, as long as it's one of those two, we have full support for it. And if it's something else, we're happy to build those as well. And then the final step, essentially, in all of this terrible monologue, in a way, is that when you're done with the physical model, you collaborated, you did all the good stuff. Then with a couple of clicks away, like in this case, my target was Fabric. It could be Snowflake or Databricks or whatever. We create the DDL. Now I could grab just this and do whatever I want to do with it, but I can, in my case, and for the purpose of this, I would push it to Azure DevOps. So we push it natively into ADO, and as we have our, my credentials, I can pick up the branch and directories and things like that, give it a little bit of name and description, and then I can push it. And then boom, it shows up on the DevOps, and then I can figure out what I want to do there with the pipelines and other activities, push it into production or push it into some testing and start building pipelines against it or something like that. So it is kind of that, if you think about it in a way, that's what we started meaning with a full stack is. We go from, very much from the beginning all the way to the kind of end to end in a sense, when it comes to modeling and preparing data products. Obviously, we're not in the ETL business. We're not doing any sort of pipeline scripts or anything like that. So that remains with the other tools. But if you are using, like, if you're data engineers or you're using like Cursor, then you could also, you have all of this available, but you can also ping our MCP server and you can ask questions about the model from the MCP server. So there's that sort of integration, but it's more helpful, not essentially doing all the work. And then we're almost at the end. So most of our customers today, so we have 60 customers today. We still have some customers in Finland, but it's less than a third of our customer base at the moment. Most of our customers are either in the US or continental Europe and UK. And we have a few customers in Australia and New Zealand as well. So we're pretty well spread. For a small team, very engineering heavy team out of Helsinki, we managed to attract quite a lot of customers. We have all of the big telco operators in Finland, as well as a few on the continental Europe. Data-rich environment. They have a lot of consumer and B2B products that they need to build. So it makes complete sense that they're heavy on data modeling. Financial services is there's kind of a two split in financial services. So one is we're very strong on insurance, and then secondarily we are doing a number of projects with banks, particularly in Europe. Everybody's joking about how Europe likes to be very regulated, and they're very true in many cases, in most cases, I would say. And particularly now there are a lot of risk management regulations coming up with this BCBS 239, for instance, and it requires a lot of banks to go through hoops in their reporting. So that also results in a lot of modeling. And then we still do have some healthcare customers, mostly in Finland, actually. So there was a huge boom in Finland some years ago about building data vaults, and Ellie was used essentially to model. Most of the regional public healthcare systems have used Ellie to model their data vaults. A lot of them are still live, but we're not signing so many new customers in this space. And then we have public services in a number of countries like New Zealand, for instance, and obviously some of the European governments, whether the Central Bank of Iceland would qualify for government services or banking. I think it's more government than banking. So those people are using Ellie, obviously. Again, complex data structures and things like that. And then the manufacturing, like I mentioned, it's one of the areas where you just have a lot of data, particularly nowadays when you pile not just the regular transactions, but you pile all of the sensor data that comes from the manufacturing. Like, for instance, if you are producing anything plastic extrusion related things, for instance, you have tons of data, or you're making the windshields for the cars, for instance. The machinery is spitting so much data from the sensors about the speed of the line, the temperature, the cooling. It's you superheat glass and then you cool it incredibly quickly again. All of that produces tons of data that then gets analyzed and processed for predictive maintenance and all kinds of other use cases. So there's a lot of that going on as well, which is highly valuable. Sometimes super boring. It's not super sexy, but it is highly valuable. It drives great value for those organizations, particularly preventative maintenance is super good use case for machine learning algorithms. Because as we have more data, we can use Ellie to model what data needs to go into the into this super wide table that then gets fed into the modeling tools, and then it spits out predictions. That's a really good use case. When we talk about AI, we tend to talk too much about the LLM, so we forget all the good machine learning stuff that the statistical analysis that can happen behind the scenes that drive huge value for a bunch of different industries. But yeah, that's wow, it was a long monologue, but Joe, what do you think? Are we somewhat aligned with your thinking about modeling?
Yeah. No, you're so different. No, I think it's walk me through this evolution though. So Ellie, you guys started off as a conceptual data modeling tool, correct?
Yep.
And
yeah. Purely
so
conceptual. Yeah.
purely conceptual, and then now you're full stack. What was the evolution like of moving from, I guess, high level to, I guess, accepting the rest of the workflow
that we need to do more? Yeah, it's I would say just overall when it comes to our product development, about 70% of our innovation comes from the clients. So so a lot of it came from the client needs, and then it's actually really interesting because the difference between physical and logical modeling is shifting. Like we actually have our biggest customer. Can't mention the name in this big of a group, but they have 100 modelers, and they're actually, when they talk about physical modeling, they're more at the logical approach from our perspective. We're like, no, guys, you're at logical modeling, and they're like, no, this is physical. So we've shifted some capabilities between the layers, so to speak, to support their efforts. But the physical modeling has come a little bit later because there are so many. In fact, there are so many tools on the market right now to do like ERDs. That it wasn't the priority, but since I'm the old school guy, so I'm still jumping right into the ERDs when I talk to people about how do you structure things. And although I did, before I joined Ellie, I did some consulting projects and I ran into some horrible third normal form gone completely wrong in design. So people tend to overdo sometimes things. So we're kind of looking to do, like, we're not looking to completely replace anything like Irvin or something like that. We get a lot of requests to replace Power Designer right now, but we're trying to figure out where is that sweet spot where we can meet most of the requirements, but I don't want to get to a level where we start tweaking indices directly from Ellie. That doesn't make any sense.
Interesting.
But it's taken several years if you think about it. We've I think the first version of the product was like 2020, 2022. We were like selling it properly. 2023, we got the first round of funding.
Yeah, and I visited your office. I think it was 23 for the first time, and it felt like the product has definitely changed since 23. I think it was like 100% conceptual back then. So
yeah, exactly. And we are and like it's a fun team because we're right under 20 people, and we have five non-developers. Everybody else is a developer, so it's and it's a great team. When you're coming to Helsinki, so we'll try to drag you to the office and show you around a little bit. It's a fun group. We even have some Finnish people working here, so it's a very international team. Yeah.
Anna has a question in the comments, so I'll read it out so people in YouTube can hear it. She asks, how do you think about the problem of keeping data modelers' concepts and glossary in sync with the terms analysts and business users use downstream, in quotes? How well does Ellie integrate with those workflows or data catalogs?
Yeah, so if you, like I said, Collibra, if you have Collibra or Purview, we have a complete 100% sync between the two. So you just need to decide which one is the master. So if it's and in most cases, it's like Collibra will end up being the master, for instance. And then whenever something changes there, we get it within some seconds. We get all of those updates. And what we, keeping people in sync is also making this tool super easy to use and accessible. That's why our read users are free. Because we want people to have lots of users to access it. It's only when you start modeling or contributing before you start paying. And we actually do offer for small consulting businesses. We also offer free licenses to do work. So it's only the Accentures and the big ones we charge. But if you are less than 50 consultants, just hit me and we'll set you up.
Everybody get a license room now. So
yeah. And we're launching a paid single user license by like $50 a month, probably early November. So it's a little bit strict, so you won't have the Collibra and some of those other enterprise integrations. It won't have naming standards. It's missing a couple of like the big features that the corporate enterprises want. But if you're a single user, or even if you are within the corporate, but you're a single user and you want to use Ellie, that makes it, financially completely viable.
In our we have a practical data modeling paid group. People don't know about that, but it does exist. And one of the things we've been doing is experimenting with AI and data modeling. Do you sense that there's competition just from people using regular ChatGPT, Claude, desktop tools to do the data modeling there versus a specialized tool like Ellie?
There is, I don't think there is a ton of competition, because it's a little bit like, you can use Miro, for instance, for conceptual modeling as well. But we actually have one large manufacturing company who stopped using Ellie in May, and because of budgets and other things, and they went to Miro. And then in September they came back because they were like, it's pretty pictures isn't going to cut it. They needed the glossary and they needed everything else that goes with it and all the integrations and stuff like that. So I think there is with, you can obviously do it. But then it becomes also, it's like, which one do you use? Do you use your own instance? Because like what happens with us is that we needed to create a facility where it's like bring your own LLM, essentially. Because there's a whole lot of security situations with enterprise. And in most cases, the enterprise customers don't want to use anything corporate. They want to run their own instance or like Azure OpenAI or OpenAI on Azure, whatever Azure AI it is, and or they run Mistral or something like that. But it's pretty cool, and obviously we have massive system prompts, and we have Hanu's expertise is built into our AI. Essentially, it's the context of modeling overall is there for everybody to leverage. So it's a little bit more than your Claude or ChatGPT out of the box.
People asking questions.
Well, I'm easy to find as well, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So as far as I know, I'm the only Sami Hero there, and it's and it is my real name, because when I lived in the US, my middle initial is A. So you can imagine, Joe, those when people were looking at my driver's license, they were convinced that it's my stage name or something. Sami Hero does not, compute. But yeah, it's a Finnish name, also an Arab name at the same time. But yeah, you can find me there, and it's Sami.Hero@Ellie.ai if you want to email me for your license. Ping me absolutely. And,
yeah, I might take you up on that actually. I think that'd be cool. Well, awesome. Thanks for your the session. I'll stop recording here. 1 second. Thank you very much.
And now Laura dares to ask a question.
Now you can talk whatever, you can ask whatever you want.